Kayfabe Weekly Shoot 55. My name's Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Jim, what day is it, dude?
March 5th.
Kayfabers new and old. Welcome subscribers new and old. Not only am I the president, but Jimmy, I'm also a member, dude. I love this channel.
It has been good lately, Ed. I feel like we've been on quite a roll this year, and I am with you 100%. It is as much fun. I can't imagine that viewers have as much fun watching it as I have making it. And this has been a hell of a week.
We're the first viewer.
Yes, that's the best way to say it. Absolutely.
When we have McFarlane on a screen right in front of us, or a Dave Gibbons on the screen right in front of us, there are parts where I have to remember that I'm not just watching one of the multitude of YouTube videos that I've watched in the past with all of those creators. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'm just watching another video, and then I'm like, oh, I could interact with this video. It's the future. We're living in the future, Jim.
We don't
respect
indeed.
it.
No, absolutely not. But it's a good future that we've crafted here, Ed.
We'll call this the Dave Gibbons debriefing session, but we have a little business to attend to up front. We were teasing our newsletter, and we were teasing some giveaways that we did and are going to continue doing, man. So shine some light on that.
Yeah, so we've been putting out this e-newsletter every 2 weeks. We have one going out this weekend. If you haven't subscribed, there's a link below the video. Please do that. It's a way basically to keep up with everything we do, because we do a lot. And you see snippets of it if you follow us, on Instagram or Facebook or wherever. We think the e-newsletter is the easiest place to keep all that information so that you don't miss anything.
We add some new stuff to it too, man.
Yeah, absolutely. That is true, for sure. So give that a subscription. Like I said, every 2 weeks. It's not like we're spamming you with anything. And now we've started some comics giveaways. Last newsletter, we gave away a box of doubles that we had. I don't know how many comics in all, but probably 60 comics. As many as I could pack into a flat rate, medium-sized USPS box.
I was going to say at least 100.
Yeah, maybe so. So I sent that out this week, and I don't have the winner's name, but I don't know if we should be announcing that anyway.
We would ask them. Just know
for
that
next time.
Yeah, we sent out this last giveaway, so if you didn't get it, oh well.
Yeah, if you haven't heard from us, you didn't get that one.
But we're going to keep things rocking.
Yes.
Did some bin diving.
This is a nice one.
Not too long ago. And Jim and I, we're like truffle pigs or something, man. We're like bloodhounds, dude. You give us
often I've described us that way.
You give us a bunch of boxes of comics, we're gonna find the cool shit, man. And for 25 cents, I found a copy of Floyd Farland, and we showed off Floyd Farland on probably Kayfabe show and tell number 4 or something. This is a super early Chris Ware comic. It may not look like it, but it is.
It's the first Chris Ware comic book.
Yes. Yeah, and this is from the 80s.
By the way, Ed, we should reframe this a little bit and not give away the quarter part.
Yeah.
Be like, we're going over the top for these books, man. This is top shelf stuff that we're giving out. Yeah. Very hard book to find.
Extremely hard book to find. 1987, afterward written by his mother. Famous kayfabe urban legend, man. If you have one of these, you can hand it off to Chris Ware and he'll draw you a piece of art. This is probably before his work appeared in the Whitney Museum and MoMA and places like that.
Or maybe it's totally urban legend and it just never happened.
Which I think it is.
But whoever ends up with this copy, if you can turn that into a Chris Ware piece of original art, let us know that.
Yeah, for sure.
That would be a fun follow-up.
Yeah, and we'll include some of our stuff in the package too, man. Like some Hip Hop Family Tree comics, maybe whatever you want to include in the kitty. We'll sign our stuff. We won't sign your Chris Ware comic. That'll be up to you. But sign up for the Kayfabe newsletter. Keep updated with our progress and things that we have to show off. It's a great place to show off JPEGs. Stuff that you could kind of sit down and actually read.
Yeah, and we should say one of the things we've been showing off are some of your script pages for X-Men Grand Design. Yeah. And by script, you draw your scripts. So It is artwork, even though it's a writing piece of the process, and a pretty cool thing to see. I know that's always my favorite. Well, maybe not always, but often that's my favorite stuff in books and collections, is those behind-the-scene glimpses and kind of a peek behind the curtain. So that's been a pretty nice extra in these first couple of newsletters.
Just talked with the editors at Marvel, and I think maybe even today, man, they hit that button to make books happen, and all of that material is going to be included in the X-Men Grand Design Omnibus. It's going to be about a 500-page book that contains the complete X-Men Grand Design and the complete script. So those little bits that I'm trickling out to you guys, leaking out to you guys, keep it on the QT, man. Don't let Marvel know. It's just between us.
It's a taste.
This is just between us. And every page is going to be published in there. It's going to be in like a landscape format, 2 pages per page, just because we couldn't make it a 600-page book. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good way to do it.
Looking forward to just like having that solid thing. It's 3 years work in between 2 nice hardcovers. That says a lot to me.
It's the deluxe treatment. And there are those books throughout history that have had that, where you get to see really the creative piece,
right?
You know, where the extras really are worth the price of admission, even if you've bought the original. You know, it's rare for me now, but it still happens where it'll be like some collection will have something that I have to have, even if I bought the original comics. And I mean, complete script, that would do it.
Can we talk Dave Gibbons? Because this is a segue. Whenever we were testing out the audio and the connection and all of that, unfortunately, I didn't screw things up into, like, this was never even intended to be broadcast, but there's a part where, you know, it's 2-man operation. There's this part of the process where I have to like just make sure, redundancy, you know, like I got to make sure that the audio was good, because how freaking heartbreaking would it be if we have this amazing conversation and can't do anything with it? So there was this like one piece that if I just wouldn't have like listened to the monitor and had that little bit of audio bleed through, I would have been able to use it and include it. But it was Dave Gibbons like, oh yeah, you know, I never knew about the Batman Absolute Year One. And DC sends me a lot of stuff, but not the hardcover. So after you guys were talking about it, I went out and bought it. It's like nobody is immune. It's like the coronavirus. Nobody's immune to the kayfabe effect, including superstar cartoonists, man.
Yeah, that was nice. That was a nice moment, because that was, I don't know when we mentioned that. I know that it's popped up once or twice when we've mentioned David Mazzucchelli or Batman Year One or something, but it felt like that was a deeper pull for Mr. Gibbons to find.
when we blaze things up, it's very weird, because like now that we've injected this new piece to the Kayfabe channel, things have gotten far more personal in a way. This kind of occurred to me this past week, where it's like the first time we met Todd McFarlane is like on the record, you know, it's like it's a personal moment, but it's also out there. Same with Dave Gibbons. It's like, yeah, this is an interview, but every question that I asked, and I would bet that you asked, would be the same questions we would ask if we were catching dinner like after a day at San Diego Comic-Con. It's like all the same stuff. It's these mounting questions that have been on your mind for decades, and it's like we now have the opportunity to talk to the guy. So it's like it's very personal to me, but now it's also out there.
Yeah, so I never thought about it that way. You're right. You know, whenever I started listening to podcasts, that personal part is, I think, something I responded to, because it is, you know, conversations are sort of intimate to begin with, and you don't talk to somebody for an hour very often. You know, at a show even, maybe at dinner would be the best bet.
Yeah.
But it's usually in conjunction with a lot of other people. You know, you see all these people you're friends with, but you see them all on one weekend. So it's 2 minutes with this person and 20 minutes, but with like 18 people. It's not the same. So like when you sit down and have that conversation for an hour with somebody, that is a real like connection that, man, I don't know. You don't always get it. If you're not recording it, I don't know that you just happen. I don't have an hour conversation with people every week.
Right. The icebreaker when he got in touch with us, this is just some behind the scenes of kayfabe stuff, but it was cracking me up just thinking about it. And unfortunately, like we didn't record this like one piece just for our own kind of home video. But like Dave pops up on Skype, and if you guys have seen the Miracle Man videos and notice Ben Mera's video, there's a button you could hit on Skype to blur the background, and Dave did that. But the way the lighting kind of was hot in his studio or whatever, it created this like little halo. So whenever it blurred the background, it like blurred around his body. And when he would like turn at like a 3/4, his ears would disappear and stuff like that. He was like, Ed, do I look weird? And I said, Dave, did you ever read Zippy the Pinhead by Bill Griffith? He was like, yeah. And I was like, well, you don't look like him. Don't worry. But if we have the opportunity to see the books, can we see the books? You know?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great part of visiting an artist, is seeing their shelves. And then everybody's so quick to like mask that off. Don't mask that off. That's gold. Like everybody's interested in that.
The part that he was talking about, like where he reads his homeboys comics just to avoid like any potential embarrassment or whatever. His homeboys are dope, so he's joking, I'm sure. And but the thing that I take away from that, or the part that resonated with me, is whenever I have people from out of town visit the studio or whatever, and I catch their eyes glancing my bookshelves and shit like that, and they may or may not see some of their stuff on the shelves, and I'm like, oh, like that's like the same thing, basically, man.
Yeah, at least if you have so many books,
and it's
pretty easy to be like, it's on another shelf in another room.
and the truth is, this is like 90%, so there's 10% at Mom's house. I just left your books at Mom's house, man. I haven't got them yet.
Yeah, and also, who's that sensitive? I know there are.
Cartoonists.
I know they are. Yes, but I'm saying like it's probably healthy to let that go. Yeah, that's funny, but it is true. I don't know. I've gotten better at like that's just not a topic of conversation. It seems like as I've gotten older.
Yeah, sure.
Nothing that I've done differently, but I don't know. Cartoonist in general, I guess you just aren't going to bring up, hey man, have you read my book?
No, yeah. And
it doesn't happen too often.
I'm sure it never comes up to him either, man. It's probably like super young, like eager beaver who might be in proximity, bump into him at that comic shop or whatever.
Yeah.
And did you get a chance to read it?
I liked how much of a fan he still is of comics, because not everybody is. Lots of pros. Whenever I was a kid and I'd read interviews and you'd read about these guys, and I think McFarlane writes about this in a Wizard that we covered.
Yeah.
A lot of guys aren't keeping up with comics, don't seem to be that excited to be reading comics and stuff. So it was pretty neat just to get his level of enthusiasm for comics. It seems like a lifelong fan, reader, and that hasn't gone away at all.
There are many takeaways that I've gotten from the past two conversations that we've had. Things that I want to just like amend and almost like a personal rule set going forward. And I sort of break it down as A&E, anecdotes and education. That's what I'm in it for. Tell me a cool story, because we can't call it a shoot interview if I don't get like tell me a Mick McMahon story. That's how shoot interviews work. And we can do that when we get a sense that the person that we're talking with is a good talker, good oral storyteller. Right. And we'll get that in 2 seconds. You know what I mean? We'll know if that's possible or not. But when you're vibing like that and the guy's just rolling, one of the really cool things about the Gibbons talk was running down my list of like questions and things I wanted to ask him. He answered a lot of the things I wanted to ask in the body of other questions.
Yes.
Like he was anticipating that this may have come up or this might come up in the future and stuff. So like when we're on that collaboration tip, one of the questions that I had was describe an ideal collaborative situation. What's required for a good collaboration? He just said that, he just included that, man. So on one hand, I think that we were very good listeners. On the other hand, there was so much opportunity, and I don't know if Dave is just a super nice guy, but he seems very amicable and interested in doing more work with us and having more conversations. But we are good listeners to a large extent, but we can be better because opportunity was provided to ask some key things, I think. When he just simply says something like, that Dr. Manhattan issue, Watchmen, is my favorite issue. It's my favorite issue. But why, Dave? Why is it your favorite issue? I know why it's my favorite, but I want to know why it's yours. And one of the major balls that I feel like we dropped, and it's that thing, like, you have your bunch of questions, I have my bunch of questions. In wrestling parlance, we want to get our shit in, but we got to keep our ears open for certain key things. And this guy had an agent in the 70s, and we didn't ask what inspired you to do that. Was that standard procedure? I don't think it was. I think that was amazing foresight, probably. And we didn't ask that question. So it's like, it's so nerve-wracking talking with like your hero for like the first time, and you want to do something great, but it's like, gotta keep a little liquid, gotta keep a little wiggle room for when the opportunity pops up to get a good one in there. You know what I'm saying, man? So that's my regret, is like the agent question in the 1970s. Very curious about that.
That's a good one. And what you're describing is just, this is the craft of interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I read about that, you read about whatever you're doing, you try to learn any of this stuff. And I can remember reading about interviewers, like Stern is a guy who's celebrated for interviewing now and has been interviewed about his interviewing techniques.
Yeah. But
you can only do so much, and it is in the moment, and sometimes you're listening and it's like, that's great, but the guy keeps talking.
Mm-hmm.
And then like three other, it's you can't always go back. Man, we got to talk to him for an hour. Like, this is a guy that you could probably talk to for 40 hours and still not have all your questions answered. For a myriad of reasons, but that's what happens. So, I think it is a good note. Like, listening is always going to be a thing. And I find video to make it harder to listen than audio only. Like whenever I was doing podcasts and there was no video feed, you could almost close your eyes and just focus on what you were hearing.
Right.
But it is a learnable skill. Like, we'll get better at it, for sure. Like, we haven't done too many of these yet.
And I don't think we're bad by any stretch. In fact, I think that we just provided the internet with the best Dave Gibbons interview that's on YouTube. Every other, like in preparation, every other interview is the soundbite interview. It's the same old questions. I'm very proud and happy that the term grim and gritty didn't come up at once. I'm very proud that that we didn't have to get the dissertation about how, in tandem with Dark Knight Returns, when they were trying to do something new, they created yet another template. Like, we've heard that exact old hash like a million times. And I don't remember if it's on the public video, but he thanked us for not asking the same old dumbass questions. I think having some skin in the game ourselves, being cartoonists who've been in the game for quite a while, I think we know the questions to ask. Like, when a fanboy interviewer gets his chance, 9 times out of 10 they have a job. They're working for Sci-Fi or this. So the idea is to create a sticky interview, something that goes out there in a big way and generates a lot of clicks and gets people to sit there for like the 10 minutes that it exists. That isn't us. There was somebody who put a comment like, I usually don't watch videos this long. You know what? This video ain't for you. Go back to your Sci-Fi fucking soundbite video, because this is the real shit. This is a real conversation, and it was awesome.
Yeah. Many thanks to Dave. I think he deserves the bulk of the credit for that. Great talker, as you say, Ed. Great thinker. I'm torn, because on one hand, I think if you're a storyteller, you're a storyteller. Like, it should work. If you're sitting down and having a conversation, that should come through. But it's not always the case. So many cartoonists, and I wonder if this is a distinction between cartoonist and comic book artist. They're not all good to talk to. We've met lots of cartoonists and comic book artists that we've had these conversations with, where it's sort of like watching paint dry on the wall.
Here's the thing, though. Like, in my experience, the best cartoonists are great oral storytellers. It's the lower level, and you know what? Their comics reflect that. Almost 9 times out of 10, the comics are confusing, and your social skills suck. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's rotten apples and good apples. You know what I'm saying?
I love the craft stuff, you know, like getting back to the questions we ask and stuff. I think if we're interested in the answers, because look, we've read tons of interviews with Dave Gibbons, you know, the phenomenon of Watchmen may be mass media since the movie came out or whatever, but like Watchmen's been, you know, since 1986 and maybe even since 1985 or something has been in the comic spotlight. So like there have been interviews with him forever that we grew up reading. Whenever video shows up, then you can start watching them. The stuff that we're interested, you know, if you're interested in it, I think it's going to generate a more interesting interview. Like if it's sincerely what you're interested in. And I like all the craft stuff. I mean, from a craft level, I think he's about as good as you get in terms of craft. And hearing him talk about the thumbnail process was pretty enlightening. And like, we know a lot about his thumbnail process. We're very lucky to have books like Watching the Watchmen and actually be able to see that process. But hearing him talk about it, I still found it very enlightening. Mm-hmm. And it actually, I was in a comic book store after we talked to him, and he mentioned the Martha Washington thumbnails that were published in the collected Martha Washington. And so I had a chance to look at those this past week. Phenomenal. And they look a little different than the Watchmen thumbnails. I don't know, you know, different tools, different time period. Maybe it was drawing a little bigger or whatever. But anybody that's interested in that, I would say, you know, if your comic shop has that collected Martha Washington, pretty high profile book, give it a flip through, because there's some great stuff in the back of that, especially if you're into that kind of bits and pieces of craft and how to. And his thumbnails, man, there should be collections of his thumbnails. Whatever thumbnails he has, they should all be available because they look great. It really is like comics storytelling 101.
Just the back end work that he does, man, is incredible. He touched on it very slightly, but his pops was like an architect. And in fact, he would letter his dad's blueprints or whatever, man. So it's like getting his first, 10,000 hours of lettering, like when he was a little boy with dad or whatever, man. But that's scientific. Like that's you can't be very creative with that, or else people will die. So his methodical approach is like it's leans more towards science than art in a way, and that's sort of like what, like his art, the rigidity of it, it's very based in craft. In preparation, I didn't know where the conversation was going to go, but I reread Watchmen twice in the past month. And I sort of always noticed how perfect he understands the figure. Like when you look at Dr. Manhattan, it's simple line work, but the jigsaw puzzle of the human anatomy, there's nothing out of place in any of those drawings. As a little kid, like having little access to anatomical charts, or the best I had was Bart Sears' Brutes and Babes bubble figures. That felt more real. Like he just he's a technically minded guy, and to have those thumbnails is I just finished like the first big piece of Red Room. And I'm inspired with like the next issue to thumbnail it out very detailed beforehand and like try to use some of his process. The only reason I'm even interested in doing these interviews is to get better. And I will listen to the top dudes in the game give me some secrets. And so I'm going to try that, and try to get it all right, like in that stage.
Speaking to that, with his layouts and then working up to finished art, I was a little bit surprised to learn that he was doing that back in the weekly 2000 AD days. Yeah. Whenever I would have assumed there's no time for anything, and he kind of explained that in a way that it is more time conscious or something to work that way. But also the iterations of the page as it's going from thumbnail to finished art, that was something that I'm trying to work out. I think I said afterwards to you off camera, I don't know what we say on camera, right, off camera, but I mentioned how like there's one extra draft right now in my process. Yeah. And Dave talked about that, like trying to keep those pages fresh at each step so that you're engaged, so that you're not tracing at the inking stage or whatever. And that's something like I'm still trying to figure out. The other piece, and it's not as easy to put into like a daily practice, but asking him about his digital background, he went digital 10 years earlier than I realized he went digital. Mm. He has such a an engagement and sort of a forward thinking. And that's something personally that I would like to take away that's not like a daily thing necessarily, but would be a career piece. You know, like he seems super engaged with the various projects that he's working on now, which says a lot. You know, I think that influences things like disposition. You know, he seemed like this gregarious, happy to be there, happy to talk with us, excited, enthusiastic about a number of topics. And I think that's all related. You know, if you're excited to get up tomorrow to work on whatever's on the drawing table, I think that informs your attitude and makes your life better, quite frankly. At least that's, you know, from my perspective, I know that's when I've felt my best, mm-hmm. whenever there's nothing I'd rather do than what I'm doing tomorrow at the drawing table. So I'm encouraged to see a guy like him who can do whatever he wants and is actively finding things that he wants to do. Because he could be doing whatever comic he wants to do, but instead he's doing other things, you know, drawing related, storytelling related, building on what he's done, but reflecting what he's interested in.
Yeah, and we should give shouts to the project that he's working on now. And if you didn't...
I have it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he has an upcoming game release, Beyond a Still Sky.
Yes.
That he's art directing. I don't know if we'll post a link to it or not, but I went and watched the trailer for it, and it's like you're seeing Dave Gibbons' art, you know, and characters running around in this environment. So Beyond a Still Sky, there was something that he had mentioned to us that he wanted to plug and didn't get to in the video. So check that out if you're a Dave Gibbons fan. It's interesting to see his art in this other direction. And, you know, I got to thinking, whenever the Watchmen movie was released, they did like Watchmen motion comics. Yes. That may have been whenever he started to get interested in that part of it.
I like those, by the way. I see in preparation for the conversation that we were going to have with him, there were some interviews where he was talking about that as being like a bleeding edge thing and that it didn't quite work. And I disagree. I think the Watchmen motion comics are awesome. They have kept me company while working many times. You know, I think I've let those things play in the background at least a dozen, 24 times over the past decade or so since those things came out. I've you know, like I've watched them, like girlfriends have watched them out of curiosity about like the Watchmen flick or something, and they're like, well, I'm not going to sit down and fuck with this comic, but like that was an acceptable distribution mechanism for them to like absorb the thing. But I think that Watchmen motion comic is fantastic. One thing I want to touch on that goes with what you said earlier about him sort of like adopting the digital thing and just being that kind of guy. As cartoonists who have come up after the analog to digital convergence, we have so much to learn from the artists who have come before, because there was so much attrition from people who just like refused to adopt modern technology. And even those, like, we'll say that some great cartoonists are grandfathered in, and the publisher will still like accept their FedExes and work on the scanning and stuff. But I also get to get dinner with those guys at San Diego Comic-Con or wherever I'm at, and all they do is complain that the end result doesn't look the way they want it to, which can be easily mitigated if they would just quit being Luddites. So I think it was important that he put that out there, and it was important for me to hear, because I'm still grinding on the paper, you know, and that's a big part of it for me. But I'll digitize it in all necessary ways to like make the thing see the light of day. But very important part of the conversation.
Yeah, he described it very well as a tool, which is the way I always see it. And when people put good or bad on it, it's sort of like, do you feel that way about a saw or a ruler or a hammer, like, or a paint tube? You know, like, these are all technologies that they're just tools. And speaking of which, I had a good week working. I did 6 pages this week, but more importantly, I had some correspondence with the printer on this next project that I'm doing. And again, man, I'm trying something that I've never seen done before.
And it looks great.
I can't wait to actually see it.
Yeah.
But it means that I need the printer to like direct me. So I've been sending files to these printers that we're getting quotes from and seeing like, can you mix ink this way? Will this work? Tell me how to set up my files. None of that's possible without the digital component. Mm-hmm. You know, to speak to what you just said, Ed, to guys that are sending out their pages or whatever, at some point it has to be digitized now. That's just part of the process. And so like, if you do it yourself, you get a lot more control, and maybe you get super control, you know? I mean, like what I'm trying to do is only based on that I've done a bunch of digital files. So like, I know this might work. It should work. I think I know how to do this, but it wouldn't have even been a possibility, you know, for me if I weren't doing this myself. So I've always viewed it as just a tool, and you know, how much that tool is used varies from book to book, but it's definitely a step in the process, and I would rather do that step than give it to somebody else to do. That's the great thing that digital has allowed, is like, you can kind of do everything yourself. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. If you're a micromanager or OCD, prone to OCD, it may not always be the best thing, but from a creative standpoint, it does allow you to have a lot of control over what you're making and how that final piece looks.
Yeah, with that in mind, I'll never let you guys slide when you use that really dumb computer lettering, that comic book lettering font that you all seem to fucking love, man. I'm always going to diss it when we do our mail things, man. Choose a better font.
Yes, choose a better font. I have no problem with digital fonts, but choose a better font. There are 2 or 3 of those that are terrible, and man, it'd be hard pressed to think of a good use of a couple of those fonts that seem to be used all the time. They're like the defaults. They must be some free comic book letter font or something. But man, just pick a better font.
Yeah.
Nothing against fonts.
Yeah.
Pick a better one.
Go digital if you like, man, but have some congruency to the work. And I think that's what it is, man. It's like, it's so static and it's so divorced from the artwork. More often than not, the people who adopt this font draw muscly shit. So it's like they're more.
I want that to be the genre. It's not superhero. It's muscly.
Might as well be a fucking genre, man, because it's like you got that shitty font with the straight tails on the balloons. You know, like just like the angled tails. Sometimes the lettering like almost touches the bubble. It's like zero consideration whatsoever. Like they got into the game because they wanted to draw veins. They wanted to draw biceps. They know where the deltoid connects to the other gimmick. And this lettering thing is like just a means to an end. Like just bang this out because I need to draw a fight scene. And it's like, the second I see that stuff, like when we go digging in the quarter bins, you see so much of that. And none of those books come with me. Even if the art looks cool, it doesn't get to come with me, man. It doesn't, there's not one of those here. And if there is, like if I accidentally like kept, like, it's out, man. Like I'm giving it away because it's poison.
Future newsletter subscribers. You hear that?
Man. I won't even put that on you guys, man. I won't put that on anybody.
Ed, I have had like kind of a busy week. You know, I said I drew 6 pages.
Yeah.
Dreamland Japan arrived.
Oh yeah, mine is coming tomorrow.
And I've gotten about 50 pages into that, and it's been a really fun read.
Is there going to have to be a video in the future, you think?
It is much less heavily illustrated. We should say this is a follow-up to Manga. It came out in the late 90s.
Yeah, the book by Fred Schott.
Which we covered a couple weeks ago and is tremendous, like highest recommendation. So his follow-up book, Dreamland Japan, it's, I guess, a more in-depth look at anime and manga specifically. I think it's like 1997. So I've started reading through it. So far, it's given a lot of history on like otaku.
Nice.
And the background of that. And it made me think as I'm reading it, because it talks about like the big conventions, you know, that are these doujinshi or like kind of amateur fan comics in Japan. And these conventions, like one of them, I think he cited as, I think it's something like $40 million changes hands in something like 2 days at this one show, which is just mind-blowing. 18,000 vendors at one of the shows. 18,000 vendors. Like I can't even imagine navigating like how you go and set up at a place like this. Several 100,000 attendees. But all of that stuff is fascinating, and it makes me think about like one of the big conventions was founded by these people who started a newsletter because they wanted to change the manga industry. You know, they were critical of the manga industry, and they wanted it to go in a certain direction. And it made me think, like, I'm critical of a lot of American comic industry things.
Yeah.
What would my dreams be? And the big one always comes down to distribution, right? We talk about it all the time. Like when I was kids, I was buying comics at gas stations and drugstores and everywhere but a comic book store until I was old enough to drive. And now it's like comic book stores are about the only place, unless libraries pop up, right? As a place you can find comics. But it made me think, all these comics are available online. Like we have the distribution already. Like you can put your comic in front of anybody, essentially.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like maybe the industry is better than I give it credit for a lot of times. Because whenever I was reading this book and seeing like what they wanted to change and thinking of like, what would I change if I could? I don't know what I don't know. Like there are comics now, I feel like, for everyone. They are available. I was thinking about what you could read online, and it's like you can read Calvin and Hobbes online. You can read manga online. Like you can find virtually any comic at this point online through legal or illegal means, often for free, or pay through any of these online services. Like maybe distribution's a lot better than I give it credit for. It's just that it's not in gas stations anymore, but maybe that's life. The big difference I see is the cost for comics.
Yeah.
They're so much cheaper in Japan. And I don't know how that works exactly.
It's volume probably.
But even in like those fan comics, are still much cheaper. So I don't know if it's paper.
I don't know about that. Like a small, because like when I was at the doujinshi floor of Mandarake, 64-page comics are $10, like that, and that's five times the price of like something that came out from Shueisha or something like that. So it's comparable and everything. I don't know what the answer is. I think we get the comics industry that we deserve, and as makers, I think it's incumbent upon us to try to make just like the best comics that we possibly can. Have respect for the reader. Make satisfying comics. I said before, like I'm in this mindset of like trying to make very satisfying issues so that anybody could like scoop it up and be happy with their purchase, because it is more it's $4 or something like that, man. Like you want to give them some value. So like, that's something that we can affect easily. We can highlight the comics that we dig and make sure that if the kayfabe effect is in effect, that your comics buying dollar is going to something worthwhile, something that's going to inspire you, something that's going to make you interested in checking out more stuff. I have no interest in covering stuff that I hate. You know what I mean? Leave that to the other fucking YouTubes.
It does kind of make me think we should do a gimmick episode sometime of stuff we hate.
It's fucking stupid. like it's below me. It's literally below me to waste any oxygen doing that in a studio with tens of thousands of comics that I like.
That's always my argument. Like I can't read a fraction of all the stuff I think I will like or that I'm interested in. Why would you go to the hate stuff?
Yeah, well, the reason it's cheap pops,
right.
It's cheap pops. It always comes up in the comments when we post, a big interview or a popular video. Why don't you guys have more subscribers? Why don't these guys have more subscribers? And the answer is like that we're not going for the cheap pop. It's like do work of merit, of value that lacks sensationalism and promote comics. You know what I mean? Like promote fucking cool comics, promote stuff that inspires you. And that's going to be a slower trail or whatever. You know what I'm saying, man? Like for everybody who dug the Dave Gibbons thing, there's probably 10 motherfuckers who were like, I don't watch videos that are 15 minutes or longer. Go somewhere else, man. We don't need you.
Yeah, for sure. One of the other videos that popped up this week was our reproduction guide.
Yes, man.
And I shouldn't say our reproduction guide, our video about the reproduction guide that Jordan Crane and his friends put together in the late 90s.
They made it our reproduction guide because they put it out there for free.
They made it everybody's reproduction guide. And that's what I saw, like, whenever we post links and people would then respond or share them, I saw so many other cartoonists sharing that with some kind of version of, this was my Bible. This was my pre-press, digital education. which is totally what it was for me personally.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people I know I would forward it to everybody whenever they would have a question about printing and production.
That's
and
how
scanning.
It works. Like when I first met you, first got into the game, like my first stuff was published from the original artwork, and I like asked you guys like, what do I do? And then you slid that to me. I myself have slid that to probably 3 dozen young cartoonists who asked me the same question that I asked you. So it's an amazing tool. And what I said earlier about we get the kind of comics industry that we deserve. When you have people do selfless stuff like that, it's good for the culture. You know, it's good for the culture of comics.
Just a huge influence too. Like it's another one of those pieces that if you're just a comics reader, and God bless you, we need you, thank you for your service, but you don't know how the sausage is made, and that's fine, you don't need to. That document has had such a profound influence on comics making in for probably 2 generations now. And it's one of those pieces that's just invisible. You know, you have no idea who learned to scan from that document, but a lot of us did.
Yeah.
A lot of us did. And, of course, Jordan Crane's still active, still making great art. I highly recommend a follow for him. I just saw he had a post. He's making some kind of screen printed something. All the pages laid out, getting ready to assemble his next book. And yeah, absolutely beautiful. So, give him a follow if that's a name that's new to you. If you're not already following him on Instagram, he posts a lot of art, drawings, printing. Been an inspiration to me as long as I've been aware of his work. So it's 20 years at this point or more that I've been looking at what he does production-wise and design-wise, and really thinking about how do I make my work better from what I can learn from him.
Yeah, that's
and very generous, as you say, Ed. Like these guys that put this kind of stuff out there, I don't think they have any idea how much of an impact that has.
Yeah, you're probably right, man. We'll have to maybe have that conversation with him. But once again, that's Jordan Crane, Crane. On Instagram, it's JD Rancor. But just type in Jordan Crane, and if there's many...
And look for the nice art.
Yeah. If there's many Jordan Cranes, it's JD Rancor, but I don't know if it's ER or OR.
I was excited to do that video. It's whenever I have lists on my phone and things where it's like I get an idea of what we should do, a show and tell of this, whatever I'm excited about.
And we should. All of it. Continue.
Yes. But that's one that's been on my list forever. Like I love that document, and it was cool to actually finally get to it, because in my mind, I have been pushing it at people forever, but have wanted to make a video about it for since we started the idea of show and tells and digging through our boxes and pulling out interesting stuff to show. That's been near the top of my list. So I was excited to get that one up.
Very glad you did, man. When we recorded it, we recorded that in January, and I've been waiting for like a good time to put it out there into the wild, man. We've just been hot-shotting the fucking Kayfabe channel, man, and that's not going to stop. I don't think.
I don't either.
I think Uncle Todd. I think Uncle Todd opened the floodgates.
Yeah,
like as a successful working cartoonist, if you can't see that Todd thing and say like I can't do a Kayfabe interview, it's like, well, Todd McFarlane did it, Dave Gibbons did it. Like, you have to do one. Yeah,
you're somewhere on the spec. You're probably not too far past those guys, no matter who you are.
Yeah. So I think the floodgates are going to open. But we have been hot-shotting the channel, and I thought that with some of the technical stuff that Gibbons was bringing up, why not have, like, the technical pamphlet, man, the holy tablet of printmaking. Lots of questions come in like the chat whenever we have certain conversations about 1200 DPI black lines and 300 DPI color. Just read the PDF, man.
Yeah, that
page 14.
Right, because I'm just going to reiterate whatever's in there, so you can go right to the source now.
Yeah, we've been recording tons of stuff. In fact, we did 2 Sundays worth of material last week, which means today is a show and tell day. And we have a lot of video to record. I'm pretty much tapped out for this Kayfabe Weekly. I do want to just remind people that we are on that road to 15,000 subscribers, and to please subscribe to the video. Join the e-newsletter, as Jimmy and I keep sneaking out little snippets of future artwork, future comics, and make yourself eligible to get some of these giveaways that we have planned.
Yeah, make that Floyd Farland yours.
Yeah.
for just signing up for the newsletter. Like what could be easier?
Easy
Ed,
comics.
before we wrap up, I do have a question for you. Hi Eisman won a Milk Caniff Award this week. I believe he was I know he was an instructor at Joe Kubert School. Yeah. I don't know if he was there when you were there. Did you have interactions with him? Is this somebody you know? Any stories about Hi Eisman and his work?
He was a teacher at the Kubert School when I was there for year one. But he was getting older. It's crazy if he's still rocking. Good for him. He was a teacher at year one of the Kubert School. So he taught lettering to Rick Veitch and Steve Bissett and John Totalbin and Tim Truman. And he taught lettering to the kids in my class. But he was slowing down his efforts. So the way the school is situated with the first year, the attrition levels, it's like there are four homerooms. It's like high school, 4 A, B, C, D. And I was in C and he taught A and B. But I still connected with him. I still talked to him a bunch because he is, you may not know his name, but he is one of the great kind of like ghost artists that have just permeated the landscape of comics in 60s, 70s, 80s, and I guess even the 90s, man. This dude would draw Tom and Jerry comics one day. He would draw, he would like ghost Prince Valiant comics the next. And he was just highly adaptable in terms of style and craft. You need him to draw like a clip art, like Radio Shack comic type gimmick. He could do that too, man. But his lettering is the shit. And the lettering that you would see in like the Rick Veitch, like Brat Packs and all that, man. Like that's how we were taught. Like that exact kind of like if I gave into my Kubert School programming, it would be that, the B nibs, the C nibs. We're going to be shooting a show and tell today where I'm going to be showing off some Hi Eisman designed assignments that he put together, man. So super cool cat. Like you could, I never saw him and Gray Morrow in the room at the same time, man, because they both had that like little like devil mustache. Like they look kind of similar. So I don't know if he really is Gray Morrow, but I'd like to put that rumor out there.
That's hilarious. I think there's something about lettering as a skill, like whenever you talk about him being able to ghost these other styles, lettering is such a detail-oriented skill. And I see it in something like in Dave Sims' Glamour Puss, whenever he's going through and doing like a really detailed analysis of various inking tools that these cartoonists would use. I wonder if that's the same vein where it's like lettering is such a detail-oriented piece of this craft. If you think of Scott McCloud's triangle of like all these different things, like the technical craft thing, lettering's pretty high. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if there's something in a letterer's brain that makes them able to do that kind of like aping, ghosting approximation because they're looking at it with this, oh, that's this kind of pen nib. Right. That's a B6 or, whatever it is. It's very technical. It's a very precise piece of comics making and the comics craft, especially when you think of artists, think of Ralph Steadman on one side of the spectrum where like it's these gestural marks and, brutalizing the tools and the paper surface and all this stuff next to like a very precise Tom Warzakowski X-Men word balloon or something. It's very opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of control and precision. And
to bring things full circle, like Dave Gibbons, like he's in that technical side of
of course. That would have been a perfect example that how would I have ever thought of Dave Gibbons?
Let me just like the way Hi taught lettering, I think is highly learnable, and but it takes time. It's that whole thing of like, do you want it? Do you want to do it? Yes. Okay. Kohai. Here's how we do it, and what for many weeks, man, for maybe 2 months, you would have a tablet of that graph paper that, how standard graph paper, the squares are sort of bigger. And then there's the graph paper where there are 4 squares that fit into that standard square. So you get that graph paper with the super tiny squares. And because like the most complicated amount of horizontal strokes is like the E. So it's 5. It's like line, space, line, space, line. So what is that? Yeah, that's 5. And that creates that. So on that graph paper, he had a certain like formula to the 2-letter groups. It would be a series of like 2-letter assignments, man, and you just fill the page up with that, like maybe like a F and an L or something like that. FL, 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 FL. Fill the page. And essentially what he will do is hold your paper like arm's length, soften the focus of his eyes, and if there's like a darker spot on any of it, you're getting a B.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Because it's uniformity, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's clarity. And the old rule of lettering is that it should be invisible. So I see that's not invisible. You get a B.
That's neat. Yeah, I've seen like sign painting documentaries, and it's the same concept. It's just like there are, I don't know, 6 strokes or something, 5, you know, there aren't very many. It's horizontal, vertical, round, you know, just a couple of these marks. And then every letter is based on those, you know, a combination of those. And so like I would watch footage of old sign painting classes, and it would just be like vertical stroke, vertical stroke, vertical stroke. Thousands of them maybe, you know, like the speed I was doing that would be super slow motion, because they are just filling up the pages with learn this stroke. You know, this is 80% of letters have this stroke. And it's the same deal, like you say, you know, like it's learnable, how to letter, it certainly is. And a lot of like the speedball guides and stuff, they will show you those strokes, you know, it's just a couple of strokes, and you just practice them forever until you get, you know, until they're second nature or whatever. So it's definitely a learnable skill, but not necessarily an easy one, not necessarily one that's even valued anymore. You know, I mean, now it's really, lettering has really moved into more of that art form, you know, once an art form, once a media becomes obsolete, it becomes an art form or something, whatever that is. It's like lettering has become that. And, you know, I follow lots of lettering accounts on Instagram, hand lettering accounts, and it's beautiful, but it really is now treated like either a Zen hobby or a very high-end art form, you know, where it's like you're paying for a craft. If you're having something hand lettered at this point, it's not like the default, like, oh, you can make a blue-collar living with your trunk full of paint cans and driving around. I always want to spend time in that world, because I mean, like, that was a trade, you know. Mm-hmm. It wasn't an art form. It was a trade, and a lot of people made their living with that, and it's just all gone now, that piece of it. Yeah. But it still exists, you know, for people who celebrate it and practice it more as a craft rather than a trade. But
yeah, at that level, yeah, that's you know, that's hipster shit. You see all the girls with the cat eye glasses with their little lettering Instagrams and all that, man. But in terms of like the comic thing, you either want it or you don't. You either want that hand lettering or you don't. And if you don't, and you try to do what I just described, it'll be tedious. And if it's tedious to you, go somewhere else. Like you're never going to get it, man, because you just can't have that monkey on your back. That it's like that. This is like a chore.
It does feel like once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like it shocks me that everybody doesn't letter their own stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's such an integral part to me. Like when I'm putting together a panel or a page, from the beginning, it's part of it. You know, like I don't know how you think about the page composition without that consideration, even though I realize the majority of American cartoonists, they don't letter, you know, or comic book artists. So
my young motivation was that the Kubert brothers were professional letterers at age 12. And I think I read that at age 12. So I'm like, fuck those guys. You know, I didn't know about nepotism and all that kind of thing, man. So it's like, let me get the tool. I seen the tool in How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. I always forget what it's called when I'm at the art store. So I'll just bring that and show the guy. And, you know, I still have I still have my first Ames lettering guide, you know, and there are like 3 or 4 of them over there. So,
if we ever start doing prank videos, that's the video to do, is to go to art stores with a picture of it and see, like,
that's funny.
You guys know what this is?
I have a good idea for some on location videos. We'll talk after that, man. But when I was young, like trying to figure that stuff out, I would take like some bond paper, 11 by 14, or like the, you know, square size. Just the first trick is to just comfortably rule a whole page without too many spaces in between when you have to like keep the thing going. Like that's like the first big hurdle to get over when it comes to like using the Ames guide. Like, so, rule a whole page of that. And then I still might even have a bunch of these things, man, but I would just fill tablets up with lettering and it would be extemporaneous. I'd be watching Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and just like Jeffrey, like, like if whatever they're saying, it's just like, but it's not even that calculated. It's just fucking sentences and words. And, I didn't know about that quick brown fox, lazy, whatever the fuck that thing is called, man. That was an assignment. Once you do your FLs and your 6-8 weeks of that, then it's like, make this sentence.
I love to think of 8 weeks of FLs.
Yeah. AQs. I forget what I do remember it was like FFL, but I don't remember what the others.
I do love the minutia of the lettering details.
And you could figure it out.
I remember Steve Lieber reading like an online column of Steve Lieber, and it was like a how to make comics, and this one was about lettering, and it would talk about the different size, like the O is a little bit bigger than the other letters. And things like that.
Right, yeah.
Like little minute little details.
And by the way, he's a student of Ty Eisman as well.
Yeah.
Like Ty taught thousands of letterers, thousands of people lettered comics in the future. That little bit of like the kerning and like the R and the O's and the P's and stuff like go a little bit above. That's always been one of those things where like, well, how much? Like how much above?
Yeah.
Because it's optical illusion because when you do that, it makes it look like it's the exact same size as everything else. Because if you abide by where like the top of the N stops, it somehow makes that O look smaller than everything else. Like there's a whole science behind it, man. It's a big conversation that we could get into, but we have other videos to
yes, we do
to shoot, man. So join the newsletter. We're sending out a Floyd Farland and a bunch of other cool shit. Next blast when we send out the newsletter. We're sending out a new newsletter this weekend. So sign up for that. Anything else?
I don't think so. I think that's it for now, Ed. Oh, you know what? I want to throw out a thanks to Gabe Dinger, a comedian who came through Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago. I went and saw his show. A fan of Kayfabe invited us out, and I had a great time at that. So thank you, Gabe, for that. I've been meaning to thank him. A couple weeks overdue, but a little bit late. Thank you for that.
Better late than never, man.
Yes.
What do you say, Jimmy? Get the heck out?
Let's wrap it up.
Give him those marching orders, dude.
Read more comics.